Darren lived a quiet life on the outer edge of Recifor, a small colony planet far from the busy core worlds. Most people here worked in farming or mining. But Darren was a mechanic. He ran a small workshop near the cliffs where old cargo ships came for repair. His only real company was his tools, his ship parts, and the sound of wind blowing across the rocky plains. He liked it this way, simple, silent, and peaceful. One night, Darren sat outside with a hot cup of tea, watching the stars. The sky on Recifor was clear and wide. You could see every tiny star blinking in the darkness. He often found comfort in watching the stars, wondering what kind of lives existed out there in the galaxy. But tonight, something strange happened. A bright streak of light shot across the sky, fast, fiery, and silent. Darren stood up quickly, eyes wide. It wasn't a shooting star. It was moving to straight, to fast, and to controlled. Then boom, a soft explosion echoed in the distance, followed by a faint glow near the cliffs. Darren didn't wait. He grabbed his jacket, tools, and a small scanner. He climbed onto his hoverbike and sped toward the crash site. The crash wasn't too far, just beyond the edge of the cliff valley. When Darren arrived, he saw a small silver vessel, half buried in the dirt, smoke rising from the sides. It didn't look like any ship he had seen before. It had smooth curves, glowing lines, and strange markings along the hull. He turned on his scanner. No radiation, no dangerous readings. Just one life sign. Inside. Darren approached slowly. The hatch was already half open, sparks flying from the edges. Inside, a figure moved, and then he saw her. A woman, tall, slim, and dressed in a dark uniform, stumbled out of the hatch. She looked injured, one arm clutching her side. Her hair was long and silver blue, her eyes deep violet. Her skin was pale, almost like moonlight. But the most shocking thing was this: she looked human, almost. "Are you all right?" Darren asked, moving closer. She looked at him, surprised, as if she didn't expect anyone to find her. I need help," she said in perfect English. Darren froze. Her voice was calm, soft, and clear. Not like a translator, not like a recording. It sounded real. "You're not from here," he said. "No," she whispered. "But I mean no harm." She swayed and almost fell. Darren caught her. Darren brought her back to his workshop, away from the crash site. He placed her on the small medical bed and cleaned her wound. It wasn't serious, just a small cut on her side. She sat quietly, watching him work. "What's your name?" he asked. "Nira," she said. "And you?" "Darren. I'm a mechanic." She gave a small nod. "I thought this was an uninhabited planet. It used to be. Now it's a colony, mostly farmers. Not many people come this far. I didn't mean to land here," she said. "My ship was damaged. I had to crash." Darren believed her. Her ship didn't look like a warship or a smuggler's vessel. It looked advanced, clean. "And she didn't carry any weapon." "You speak my language very well," he said. She looked away for a moment. "I studied it." That made him pause. "Studied it? Why?" She didn't answer. The next day, Nira stayed inside while Darren checked the shipwreck. It was damaged badly. The engine core was cracked, and one wing was crushed from the fall. He salvaged a few tools and returned quickly, hoping no one else had seen the crash. In the evening, they sat near the workbench. Nira watched as Darren cleaned metal parts with a soft cloth. "You're good with machines," she said. "I've been fixing them since I was a kid," Darren replied. "My father taught me. He used to work on colony freighters." "You live here alone?" He nodded. "People think it's boring, but I like the quiet." Nira smiled slightly. "It's peaceful." She looked around his small workshop, tools hanging on the walls, wires scattered across the table, and a small photo of a younger Darren with his family in front of an old cargo hauler. "You said you studied humans," Darren asked, trying again. "Why?" She paused. "My people. We study many species. We watch from afar. Your kind has always been interesting to us." "Interesting how?" "You feel things deeply. You form strong bonds. You build even when the odds are against you. It's different from what we're taught." Darren raised an eyebrow. You were watching us like we were animals in a lab? No, she said quickly. It wasn't like that. It was research. But I never expected to meet one of you face to face. You don't seem dangerous, he said. But I should report the crash. She looked up sharply. Please. Don't. If they find me, they'll take me back. I'm not allowed to make contact. Why not? I can't say. Darren leaned back, thinking. Everything about this felt strange, but his gut told him Nira wasn't a threat. She was careful, polite, and honest about being out of place. I won't tell anyone, he said. But you need to fix your ship or find another way off. This planet, she nodded. Thank you. That night, Darren watched the stars again from the workshop roof. Nira sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket. Why do you watch the sky? She asked. It reminds me how big everything is, he said. Makes my problems feel small. She looked up, her eyes soft. I used to think I understood humans. But now, I'm not so sure. Darren looked at her. That makes two of us. They sat in silence. Two strangers, under a sea of stars, neither knowing what the future would bring. But something had already changed. Darren woke up early the next morning. The air on Restifor was cold just before sunrise, and thin clouds floated across the sky. He walked into the workshop, expecting to see Nira resting. But she was already awake. She sat near the back wall, staring at a broken part of a ship engine. You're up early, Darren said, surprised. I don't sleep much, Nira replied without looking up. My kind needs less rest. He walked over and noticed she had removed several bolts from the engine shell and placed them neatly beside her. You were trying to open this? Yes, she said calmly. I've seen this model before. It's similar to an older Earth cargo engine. I thought maybe it could help repair my ship. Darren was impressed. Most outsiders, even trained mechanics, had trouble understanding old Earth tech. But Nira seemed comfortable with it. Comfortable. You've seen this model before? He asked. Nira paused. Yes, I studied your technology during my training. Darren crouched beside her, watching as she adjusted a panel. You didn't just study our language, did you? She didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, No, I studied everything. Over the next few days, Nira helped Darren in the workshop. She moved silently, quickly learning how he sorted tools and repaired broken ship parts. Darren began to enjoy her company more than he expected. She didn't speak much, but when she did, her words had meaning. She listened, observed, and showed interest in the smallest details of his life. One evening, while they were fixing a broken hover generator, Nira asked, Why do you live so far from others? Darren shrugged. I guess I like to be alone. Life in the cities is noisy. People don't listen there. Out here, it's quiet. I can think. Nira tilted her head. Doesn't it feel lonely? Sometimes, he admitted. But I got used to it. Besides, machines don't argue or lie. They just break, and I fix them. She looked at the generator in front of them. I understand that. Later that night, Darren was cleaning tools when a message alert blinked on his comm screen. He opened it and found a report from the Colony Watch Station. A patrol drone had picked up strange energy readings near the cliffs. The message warned citizens to stay alert and report anything unusual. His stomach tightened. They were close to finding the crash site. He turned to Nira, who stood silently behind him, reading the message over his shoulder. They're coming, she said softly. Yes, Darren said. We don't have much time. The next day, Darren and Nira returned to the crash site. They hid behind a ridge and watched from a distance as a survey drone hovered nearby, scanning the area with a blue beam. We can't go near it anymore. Darren whispered, They'll find your ship soon. Nira's face was calm, but her voice had a hint of worry. If they find it, they'll contact the Central Authority. My presence here will be exposed. What happens if they find out? Darren asked. I'll be taken back, she said. Maybe punished. My people, they have rules. We're not allowed to interfere with developing species. Darren frowned. But humans already joined the galactic community. She looked at him. Yes, but only some of you. Many worlds, like this one, are still watched closely. My mission was to observe without being seen. Then why did you come to me? I had no choice. I was injured. I needed help. Darren nodded. He believed her, but something inside him was starting to change. He wasn't just helping an alien anymore. He cared. He didn't want her to be taken. Back at the workshop, they worked on building a temporary power core. Nira believed they could use it to power her ship's damaged systems for one final flight. While they worked, Nira asked, "Do you ever wonder what's out there? Beyond these stars?" Darren smiled. "All the time. But I know I'll never go. I don't belong in space. I belong here on the ground, with wires and engines." She looked at him. "Maybe you belong in both places." He laughed gently. "You think I'm built for space. I think you're built for more than you know." Her words were quiet, but they stayed in his mind long after the moment passed. The next morning, Darren found Nira standing outside, looking at the rising sun. "I never noticed how warm this world is," she said. Darren raised an eyebrow. "It gets cold sometimes." "I don't mean the weather," she replied. "I mean, everything feels alive here. The air, the people, even the silence has meaning." He stood beside her. "You really like it?" She nodded. "I thought humans were unpredictable, dangerous. But being here, talking with you, I'm beginning to see something different." Darren looked at her closely. "What are you seeing?" She met his eyes. "Hope." Later, while cleaning some old wires, Darren finally asked, "Nira, why are you really here? You said it was a research mission, but it feels like more than that." Nira hesitated. "It was supposed to be simple. Land near a small colony, watch from a distance, report on human behavior. But something changed." "What changed? You?" she said softly. Darren stopped. He didn't know what to say. His heart beat faster. "I was trained not to feel," Nira continued. "My people believe emotions lead to chaos. But here, I've seen kindness, care, and patience. You helped me without asking anything in return." Darren tried to hide the warmth in his chest. "That's just what we do." "Maybe," she said, "but it means something to me." They stood in silence for a moment, the air filled with quiet, tension neither of them wanted to break. That night, Darren sat alone, staring at the stars once more. Nira stayed inside, reading a small data pad. He thought about what she had said, about how her mission was changing, about how she saw something in him that he never saw in himself. Maybe this wasn't just about a crash. Maybe it was the start of something much bigger. But they were running out of time. The colony patrol was closing in, and soon, hiding Nira would no longer be possible. Darren knew one thing for sure: he didn't want her to leave. Not yet. The morning sun rose slowly over the dusty hills of Reservoir. A soft wind carried the dry scent of metal and sand into Darren's workshop. Inside, Darren stood with his arms crossed, watching Nira work on the small power core they had built together. She moved with smooth, careful hands, focused, quiet, and calm as always. Darren had questions building up inside his chest. Questions he didn't want to ask, but had to. Finally, he said, "Nira, I think you're hiding something from me." Nira didn't stop working. She connected a blue wire to the coil and tested the power with a small spark. "I told you most of the truth," she said. "Not all of it," Darren replied. "You didn't just land here by accident, did you?" Nira looked at him. Her violet eyes were unreadable. "You're right," she said after a long pause. "I didn't crash by accident. My ship was damaged during reentry because I refused to return home when I was supposed to." Darren blinked. "You chose to stay." "Yes, I stayed longer than my mission allowed. I kept watching humans. I kept watching you." Darren's heart skipped. "Why?" Nira looked down. "Because something about you, something about the way you live, the way you help, it made me feel something I was trained to avoid." "Feel what?" "Connection," she whispered. "Curiosity, care." They sat together outside that evening, both quiet, both lost in their own thoughts. The stars began to appear one by one. Nira finally broke the silence. "My people are part of a large alliance. They are strict, emotionless, and focused on order. For centuries, they believed emotions only caused problems, so they removed them completely." "You mean they don't feel anything?" Darren asked. No joy, no sadness, no love. They are calm, cold, and efficient. They think that's the best way to lead. Darren shook his head. That sounds lonely. It is, Nira said softly. I didn't realize how lonely until I came here. She looked up at the stars. I was chosen for this mission because I was top of my class. Perfect control. No distractions. But after a few weeks watching humans, something changed inside me. Your people argue, laugh, cry, yet you still keep going. You care for each other. Even when it's hard. Darren said nothing. He just listened. Every word felt heavier than the last. I thought I understood emotions from my studies, she continued. But watching isn't the same as feeling. When I met you, I felt something real for the first time. The next morning, Darren and Nira were working near the old signal tower behind the workshop. They were trying to build a communication jammer that would block nearby drones from scanning the area. If the patrol sent another drone to check the crash site, they needed to be ready. While connecting wires, Darren asked, if your people find you, what will they do? Nira stopped. They'll take me back. Erase the memories. Maybe send me to a different sector. I won't be allowed. Near humans again. Darren's jaw tightened. They can erase your memories. Yes, it's done often. Feelings are seen as a failure. That's wrong. I know, Nira said. But my voice won't matter unless I bring proof. Proof that human emotion is not a weakness. Then it can be a strength. Darren stepped closer. Is that why you stayed? I stayed because I didn't want to forget this. I didn't want to forget you. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. That night, a loud buzzing woke Darren from sleep. He ran outside and saw a patrol drone flying low, scanning the cliffs with a red beam. He rushed inside. Nira. They're here again. Nira was already up, packing a small case. We have to hide. They hurried to the back of the workshop, behind an old metal door that led to a storage room underground. Darren had built it years ago to store power cells. Now, it was their only hiding place. They waited in silence, heartbeats loud in the dark. The drone flew over the workshop, then stopped. A beam of light scanned the roof. Darren held his breath. Nira leaned close. If they scan too deep, they'll detect me. I won't let them take you. Darren whispered. You can't stop them. They're faster and stronger. I don't care. The drone hovered for a while, then finally moved on. They both let out a breath of relief. Back upstairs, Nira looked at Darren with serious eyes. I don't have much time. Once the full patrol arrives, they'll find me. Darren clenched his fists. There has to be a way. I can finish repairs on my ship, she said. But I need your help. We must finish it before nightfall tomorrow. Then let's get to work. For the rest of the day, Darren and Nira worked nonstop. They took the power core they built and connected it to the remaining systems in her ship. Darren fixed the left wing with spare plates. Nira reprogrammed the flight controls to run manually, avoiding her people's signal networks. While working, Darren noticed something. Nira smiled more. She laughed softly when he dropped a tool or made a silly comment. She moved closer, stood beside him longer, and sometimes reached out without thinking. It felt normal, like they belonged, and that scared him more than anything. As the sun began to set, they tested the ship's power. The lights turned on. The engine hummed. The main panel showed green. It's working, Nira said. We did it. Darren didn't celebrate. He just stared at the ship. You're really going to leave? I have to. If I stay, I'll put you in danger. Darren looked down. I don't want you to go. Nira stepped closer. I don't want to leave either. He looked up into her eyes. Then stay. I can't, she whispered. But before I go, I want to show you something. She opened a small panel in her ship and took out a silver disc. It glowed softly. This holds every moment I've spent here, everything I've felt. If I give this to the council, it could change how they see humans. It could prove that emotions are powerful, not dangerous. Darren took the disc gently. You think they'll listen? I don't know, Nira said. But I have to try. That night, Darren sat alone. Again under the stars, he thought about everything she had said, about how her people feared emotions. about how she had risked everything just to feel something real. He had always believed he was meant to be alone, that no one would ever understand the quiet life he lived. But now, he wasn't sure, because someone from the stars had come into his life and really seen him, and tomorrow, she might be gone forever. The air was tense the next morning. A thin mist hung over the valley near the workshop. Birds didn't chirp, wind didn't move. Everything felt still, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Darren stood at the edge of the cliff, looking toward the crash site. A new light blinked in the distance. Another drone. Bigger, slower, watching. "They found your ship," he said quietly. Nira stood beside him, arms crossed over her chest. Her long coat fluttered in the cold breeze. Her face was calm, but her voice was low. "Then the fleet will arrive soon." Darren turned to her. "How soon?" "Maybe one day. Maybe less. Once they confirm my identity, they'll come in full force." "Can we finish the final repairs before that?" Nira nodded. "The ship is almost ready. Just one last connection. Then I can leave the planet." Darren didn't like how she said that, "I can leave." It sounded final, like a goodbye waiting to happen. Back at the workshop, they worked in silence. Darren tightened bolts on the engine mount while Nira rewired the ship's interface system. The main screen flickered to life. A quiet beep told them the flight program was online. "You'll have enough power for one long jump," Darren said, "but you need to recharge at the nearest outpost." "I know," Nira replied. "I'll set the coordinates once I'm in space." They both knew what that meant. Once she left Resifor, she would be out of reach forever. No messages, no visits, just silence between the stars. "I wish there was another way," Darren said. "There isn't," Nira answered. "If they find me here with you, they'll erase everything. I'll lose all my memories." "You'll be labeled a threat." Darren paused. "And if you run now, will they chase you?" "Maybe," she said. "But if I leave before the main fleet arrives, I have a chance." He looked at her face. Calm as always, but her eyes were tired, sad. She didn't want to go either. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, Nira stood outside the workshop, staring at the sky. The stars began to appear again, small lights blinking in the dark, like old memories. Darren walked up behind her. "Will they really erase everything? All your time here?" "Yes," she said. "They'll see it as a mistake, a weakness. Then don't let them take it." She turned toward him, surprised. "Take the ship. Fly before they arrive. Don't wait." Nira shook her head. "I can't just run. I need to record everything properly, every feeling, every moment. If I bring back a full report, I might make a change, even if it's small." Darren stepped closer. "But at what cost? What if they take the report and erase your memories anyway?" Nira's voice lowered. "Then at least I'll know I tried." They stood together in the soft light of dusk, close, silent. "Finally," Nira said, "there's something I want to give you." She opened her hand and showed a small black stone. It shimmered slightly in the fading light. "What is it?" Darren asked. "It's a memory stone from my world. It holds thoughts, feelings, images." She placed it in his hand. "It's part of me now. If you ever wonder if this was real, just hold it." Darren closed his fingers around it. "Thank you." That night, Darren couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty workshop, thinking of all the days they had spent working, fixing, laughing in quiet moments. He stopped at the edge of the ship, his hand resting on the cool metal. He didn't want her to leave. Not because of the danger, not because of the rules, but because she had become part of his world. Then a sound broke the silence. A faint humming, a vibration in the ground. He ran outside and saw them, 3 lights in the sky, moving fast, sharp. "Silent. Ships. Nira," he shouted, running back inside. She was already standing, her coat on, datapad in hand. "They're early," she said. "Can you take off now?" "Yes," she said, "but they'll follow me if they detect the launch. Then we need to hide the launch signature." "There's no time. I have an idea," Darren said. "We'll overload the tower beacon. It'll send out false energy waves. They'll think the signal is coming from another part of the valley. Nira hesitated only for a second. Then she nodded. Let's do it. They ran to the old comm tower. Darren climbed the ladder, moving fast despite the cold wind. Nira passed him a power cell. He connected the wires quickly, sparks flying. Now, he shouted. Nira activated the control panel. A burst of blue light flashed across the valley. Followed by a pulsing hum, the signal launched, strong, loud, misleading. They'll go there first, Darren said, breathing hard. Then I'll leave now, Nira replied. Before they correct the error, they rushed back to the ship. Nira climbed inside and started the systems. The engine hummed gently. Darren stood beside the door. Heart-pounding. She looked at him. I don't know if we'll ever meet again. She said, You don't know, or you're not allowed to. She smiled sadly. Both. He stepped closer. Then before you go, I want to say something. She waited. I don't care where you're from, or what rules you've been given. You changed something in me. You made this empty place feel like home again. Nira's eyes softened. You did the same for me. She reached out, touched his hand, warm, real. Then she stepped into the ship. The door closed slowly. Darren stepped back as the engine glowed brighter. The ship lifted into the air, silent, smooth, rising toward the stars. He watched until it became a dot in the sky, and then it was gone. Back in the quiet workshop, Darren sat on the roof, holding the black memory stone in his palm. He stared at the sky, wondering where she was, if she was safe. Then his comm screen blinked. One message. No signal origin. No sender ID. He opened it. And saw the words, asterisk, asterisk, before I leave. Darren stared at the blinking message on his old comm screen. Before I leave forever, I want to ask you something. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. The signal was untraceable. No name, no origin, no channel. And yet he knew who. It was Nira. He quickly typed back, I'm here. Ask anything. No reply came. The screen went dark. Darren leaned back in his chair, heart pounding. The message had come just minutes after she left the planet. He didn't know how she sent it, or from where. He only knew that she hadn't said goodbye completely. Outside, the wind blew softly across the quiet hills. The false signal beacon still hummed faintly from the tower. The night sky stretched wide above the valley, filled with blinking stars. And somewhere out there, she was watching. The next morning, Darren stood near the ship's crater. The ground was scorched. The sand turned to glass in places. He ran his hand over the marks left by the launch. In the distance, the patrol drones hovered over the cliffs, scanning the terrain. They had arrived too late. Darren knew the memory stone in his pocket could never replace Nira, but it was all he had left now. Sometimes, he held it in his hand and felt something gentle press against his thoughts. It was not a voice, not words, but emotions, warmth, gratitude. A quiet spark. That afternoon, while Darren worked on an old power converter, the comm screen blinked again. A second message. He rushed over and tapped the screen. If you want to see me again, come to the lake by the old mountain road. One last time. Before sunset, he read the message 3 times. Then he dropped his tools and ran. The old mountain road twisted through the valley. Like a winding ribbon, it hadn't been used in years. Trees had started to grow over it, and some parts were cracked from storms. Darren took his hover bike, moving fast, heart racing the whole way. He reached the lake just before sunset. The water was still and clear, glowing orange under the fading sun. Hills surrounded it on all sides, quiet and peaceful. Birds sang from the trees. Everything looked untouched, and then she appeared. Nira stepped out from behind a tree, dressed in the same dark coat, her silver blue hair flowing in the wind. Darren stopped in his tracks. For a moment, he didn't speak. I thought you left, he finally said. I did, she replied. But I turned back. You turned back, he asked, stepping closer. Yes, she said softly. I couldn't leave without asking you. First, they sat together on a flat rock by the lake. The sun dipped lower behind the hills. The sky turned golden, then pink. I sent the report, Nira said. Everything we felt, everything I learned, it's with them now. My people will read it. They may understand, or They may ignore it. And you? Darren asked. What will happen to you? They gave me a choice, she said. Return. Now and follow orders, or disappear. Disappear. Go into hiding. Stay away from both our worlds. Darren looked at her. What did you choose? She looked into his eyes. That depends on you. His heart jumped. Me. Yes, she said. I can't go back to my old life. But if I stay, I need to know it means something. That it's not just escape. Darren was quiet. The breeze picked up, making small ripples across the water. Nira continued, her voice lower now. You changed me. You didn't just fix my ship, you made me feel human. You showed me kindness, patience, trust. No one has ever done that for me before. She looked down at her hands. So before I leave, or stay, I want to ask you something. Darren leaned in, heart pounding. Ask. She looked up. Would you come with me? The question hit him like a wave. He didn't speak for several seconds. He looked at the lake, then at her, then at the sky. Go with you? He asked slowly. Nira nodded. There's a place beyond the borders, a neutral zone. No rulers, no watchers, just life. I can live there in peace, but I don't want to do it alone. Darren took a deep breath. I've never left this planet. I don't know anything about space. I'm just a mechanic. That's all I need, she said. Someone honest, someone real. But I don't belong in your world. I don't belong in mine either, she said. But maybe we can make a new one together. Darren looked into her eyes. They were filled with hope and fear. She was giving him a choice not because she was desperate, but because she believed in him. And somehow, that meant everything. The sun had nearly set. The sky turned a deep purple. Stars began to appear again. One by one. Darren smiled. I'll go. Nira's eyes widened. You're sure? He nodded. I've spent my whole life fixing broken things. Maybe it's time I build something new. She reached for his hand. Then let's leave together. They stood up and walked to a small ship hidden behind the hill, different from the one she crashed, smaller and sleeker. She had borrowed it from an outpost in the neutral zone. They climbed inside. As the ship lifted into the sky, Darren looked down at Recifor one last time. The cliffs, the workshop, the empty roads, the place he had called home for years, and yet, somehow, it didn't feel like home anymore. Not without her. In the quiet of space. Nira entered the jump coordinates. The stars stretched ahead like endless silver paths. Darren sat beside her, still trying to understand what had just happened. He looked over at her. So, what happens next? She smiled. Whatever we choose. The ship flew through deep space, quiet and smooth, like a bird gliding through an endless night sky. Darren sat in the co-pilot's seat, looking out the window. He had never seen space this way before. Stars sparkled like tiny candles, nebulous. In the distance, glow with soft colors: blue, pink, and violet. Everything felt peaceful and endless. Beside him, Nira adjusted the controls, her eyes focused. Hands calm, she moved with confidence, but her expression was softer than before. She was no longer just a scout or a soldier. She was something more. Now something human. Where are we going? Darren finally asked. There's a planet in the neutral zone. Nira replied. No war, no orders, just nature. People from many worlds go there to disappear or start over. Is it safe? He asked. She looked at him and smiled gently. Not perfectly, but safer than most places. Darren nodded slowly. That's good enough for me. It took 2 days to reach the planet. During that time, they spoke more than they ever had before. Nira told him about her world, how she was trained from a young age, how emotions were seen as distractions, and how she always felt out of place. I followed orders for years, she said. But deep down, I wanted something else, something real. Darren shared stories about his childhood on Recifor, his quiet workshop, and how he used to dream of seeing the stars, until life made him stop dreaming. Now, here they were together, chasing a new life neither had expected. When they landed, the planet looked nothing like Darren had imagined. It was beautiful. Tall trees with silver leaves stretched across the landscape. Rivers glowed with blue light. The air was fresh, filled with the sound of soft wind and bird-like creatures singing in the trees. The settlement wasn't big, just a few small homes built between the hills, using metal and wood. People moved quietly, smiling politely as they passed, different species, different faces, but all living in peace. A man with a short beard and bright yellow eyes greeted them at the dock. "You two new here?" he asked. Nira nodded. "We're looking to stay. Plenty of room," the man said. "We don't ask questions. Just help when you can, and respect your neighbors." He handed them a small map and pointed toward an empty house near a lake. "It's yours, if you want it." The house was small but perfect to rooms. A clean kitchen and a porch that looked over the quiet lake. Flowers grew round the edge, and flying lights blinked near the water at night. Darren stood on the porch, watching the stars reflect on the lake. "This place doesn't feel real," he said. "It is," Nira said, standing beside him. "It's the kind of place people like us only find once." They unpacked slowly, piece by piece. Darren set up a small workbench near the window. Nira organized tools, maps, and supplies. There was no rush. For once, they had time. Days passed like soft waves. Each morning, Darren helped fix broken machines for the settlers' water filters, food units, small transports. The people liked him. They called him the quiet fixer. Nira helped patrol the nearby forest paths with a few locals. She didn't speak much, but she was quick, alert, and kind. They trusted her fast. At night, Darren and Nira would sit on the porch, sipping warm drinks, watching the moons rise. "Do you miss your home?" Darren asked one night. Nira shook her head. "This is the first place that feels like home," he smiled. "Same here. But peace doesn't last forever, not in the galaxy they came from." One evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, a small shuttle landed near the edge of the village. Nira's eyes narrowed. "That's not a local ship." Darren stood beside her, watching carefully. A figure stepped out tall, wearing a long dark coat with a silver badge on the shoulder. A scout from Nira's world. He was alone, but serious. His face looked tired. He walked slowly toward the village. Square. Nira didn't move. Darren whispered, "Do you know him?" She nodded. "His name is Varn. He trained with me. He's not someone to ignore." The village gathered around as Varn spoke. "I'm not here to arrest anyone," he said loudly. "I just have a message." He held up a small device and activated it. A blue hologram appeared, a council leader from Nira's homeworld. "Scout Nira, we received your report. Your words were read, your actions noted. You are no longer considered a danger. You are free to live where you wish. But know this, your path no longer leads back to us." The hologram ended. Varn turned to Nira. "You've been released, fully. I came here to make sure you heard it from us." Nira looked surprised. "You're serious?" Varn nodded. "Things are changing, slowly. Your report started something." He looked at Darren, then back at her. "You made a choice. Now we're making ours." Then he turned and walked back to his ship. That night, as the stars returned above the lake, Nira sat beside Darren in silence. She finally spoke. "I never thought they'd let me go. They saw what you became," Darren said softly, "and maybe they understood." Nira looked at him. "This world, us, it wouldn't exist without you." Darren shook his head. "It wouldn't exist without us both." They sat quietly, watching the sky. No orders, no missions, no goodbyes. Just a new life, built together. The wind was gentle that morning. The lake was still, like a silver mirror, and soft clouds floated above the trees. Darren stood on the wooden porch, a warm cup in his hands, watching the light dance on the water. Behind him, the small house was filled with quiet sounds. Nira's soft footsteps, the hum of a kettle, and the calm breathing of a place that finally felt like home. It had been 3 months since Varn delivered the message. Nira was free. The past no longer held her in chains. And yet, Darren could feel something building, like a question waiting in the air. That afternoon, Nira walked down to the lake, alone. Darren watched from the porch, curious. She didn't speak much these days, not because she was distant, but because she was thinking deeply. Her eyes, one sharp and full of caution, now held softness and thought. She stood by the edge, staring at the reflection. Darren followed after a while. He didn't ask anything. He just stood beside her. I used to think silence meant danger, she said suddenly. He looked at her, surprised. On my homeworld, quiet moments were rare. We were always being tested or watched. Silence was what came before orders or punishment. Darren nodded gently. And now it feels peaceful, but also strange. Like I'm still learning how to be calm. She looked at him. You taught me that. Over the next few days, Nira grew quieter. She would stare at the stars longer than usual. Her hands would pause mid-task. Sometimes, she would open her mouth to speak and then close it again. One evening, while Darren repaired a power node outside, Nira walked up to him. Can we take a walk? She asked softly. He wiped his hands and nodded. Of course. They walked slowly through the forest path. The moonlight touched the trees, and soft blue lights from the flying insects floated around them. It was like walking through a dream. Nira didn't speak for a while. Then, finally, she stopped. Before I leave, she said quietly, I want to ask you something. Darren's heart skipped. His hands suddenly felt cold. Leave? He asked. She turned to face him. There's a chance, she said, that my people might change. The council that read my report. They've asked if I would consider returning not as a soldier, but as a voice. Darren's chest tightened. He tried to stay calm. A voice for what? For peace, she said. To help others like me. To change things from inside. He looked down at the dirt path. And you're thinking of going, she nodded. I don't know yet. That's why I haven't told you. Because the idea of leaving this place, and you, feels like cutting off part of myself. There was silence. Then Nira reached into her pocket and pulled out something small, a smooth, white stone with a single line carved through the center. She placed it in his hand. It's a bonding stone, she said. In my world, it means you trust someone enough to build a future together. Darren stared at the stone. It felt warm, almost like it had a heartbeat. I don't want to go without knowing, she said, voice trembling. So, my question is, if I leave, will you come with me? Darren stood frozen. The forest, the lights, the stars, everything around him faded as her words sank in. Leave this peaceful place, the quiet life, the safety they'd found, but also go with her, stay by her side, help her build something better. He looked up into her eyes. Yes, he said. Her lips parted slightly. Yes, I don't care where we go, Darren said. I only care that we go together. Nira took a deep breath, and her shoulders relaxed, as if a weight had fallen from her. Thank you, she whispered. Then she smiled fully, brightly for the first time since they met. 2 weeks later, they stood near the ship that would take them back. The village gathered to say goodbye. Darren shook hands with people he had fixed things for. Nira hugged a child who had given her flowers a few days ago. You'll come back, right? The boy asked. She knelt and nodded. One day, with stories, they boarded the ship, and as the engines hummed to life, Darren looked out the window. At the lake one last time. We'll return, he whispered. This place will wait for us. The ship took off. As stars filled the view again. Nira sat beside Darren and held the bonding stone between them. We were both broken when we met, she said. Darren nodded. And we fixed each other. They didn't know what waited on them. Other side of the galaxy, challenges, resistance, perhaps danger. But they weren't afraid. They were together. And for the first time in their lives, they had chosen their own path.